Welcome to the Inspiring Victory Show, where we help you double your business, double your impact, and change the world. And one of our fan favorites is here today. Kim-Adele Randall is with us from England. And Kim-Adele is one of the smartest human beings I've ever met in my life, and innovative and extraordinary as a consultant, really amazing on stage. If you haven't seen her TEDx talk, definitely go have a look at that. And she has a brand new book, which I absolutely love, called The Curious Leader. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today, and just the power and the importance of that is so often overlooked. So if you want to know more about how to grow your business, how to wrangle your business and take control of it really, really well, and how to be more innovative, this is the day. This is your moment, and this is going to help you a whole lot. Welcome to the show, Kim-Adele.
Hi,
Nice to
Sarah.
see
Thank you so
you.
much for having
Hi.
me. I really appreciate it.
So why is it so important that leaders be curious? Like, what makes that you always say that's a superpower. Why is that a superpower?
I think for me, it's a superpower because we've all been taught to do the opposite. So we've been taught as leaders that we should know all of the answers, that we should always be the one that seems to be in control. And yet, if we know all of the answers, we can only go as far as we've already gone because we know the answers to get to here. What we need to do is have the confidence to be curious about what we don't know yet, because that's going to be the thing that gets us where we want to go. And you've got to have the confidence to be vulnerable enough to not know the answer. And it's all about the importance of having a vulnerability without losing credibility. So it's very easy for us to be super vulnerable. We could all start sobbing, but then we'd lose credibility. So it's a really fine line. And because of that, people tend not to make that leap. They're worried that if I ask you what you can see that I can't see, that you might doubt what I know. Well, I know what I know. What I don't know is what you know.
That's fascinating. I love that. I love that. I know that in the subtitle, there's three main things that I know you talk about in the book. Tell me about the first one and why you think that's so important.
So the first one is about unlocking performance. And I think for me, that's important in any organization. We get hung up on the fact that our problems in our business show up in the numbers, but I guarantee they manifest in the people. And so once we start to understand what's going off in our world, we can really start to unlock their potential, because people don't get things wrong on purpose, or at least in the main, they don't. So usually they're trying to do the right thing. Their intention is honourable, but their impact is off. And so how do we help them align what they're trying to do with what they actually do? And a large part of that is helping them to have permission to be part of the solution. When we're constantly telling everybody what we know, we're not inviting them to help us solve the problem. And so they will sit there and they will see things that could be changed, and they won't tell us about it because they think we know, because we've given off this impression that we know it all. And so the things that are really obvious to them, they assume we know. And yet in every organization, my favorite question to ask is, what is the strangest thing we make you do every day? What's the thing we make you do that you go, what on earth are they making me do this for? Because I guarantee that's where your low-hanging fruit is. Because they think we know that they're doing that. And we have no idea they're doing it. In every organization I've been in, that's the question I ask. And I always save money in the first 2 weeks by asking it. Because once you know what it is, you can get them to stop. Actually, that is a really strange thing. Don't do it anymore. There's no need.
And why are they doing those strange things usually?
Because over time,
where do they come from?
They come usually from misinformation or misunderstanding. So, for example, I went into one organization and they had an MI team. For our American viewers, it's management information. So it's the statistics, the numbers that you use to run your business. And we had this team and they were generating reports. They were generating 1,000 reports a month. Wasn't that big a business? I mean, what are you reporting on? And they'd done them because they'd been told to do them. But when you unpicked it all and you looked back, over time, every new leader that came in wanted a new report. Same information, same numbers, they just wanted it in a different format, but they didn't stop the old one. So over time, they just layered on these reports that no one was looking at, no one was interested in, and we were paying a fortune for the creation of them. And that team could actually have been redirected to work on innovation and the technology to improve the business. So I said to them, right, okay, why don't we just still do them for a month, but don't send them anywhere? Keep them and see how many people ask you for them. And if nobody asks you for them, stop producing them. And we reduced it down to about 100 reports that needed to go out for regulatory reasons. And we diverted that team to start to run our innovation and improve our efficiency so that we actually had a much better cost to acquire and a much better cost to serve. And they were much happier because they weren't doing boring work that they thought was silly.
They weren't telling anyone that they thought it was silly because they'd been asked to do it and they were good employees doing what they'd been told to do.
And they didn't want to lose their
Ah,
job. So if they suddenly go, everything I do on an everyday basis adds no value, I'm basically saying I add no value, and then you might get rid of me. So it's a little bit like asking turkeys to vote for Christmas. You know, they're not going to do it. There's too much at stake. So instead, asking people, you know, what could you do? You know, if you were the one in charge for a day, what would you be doing differently? Where can you see there's an opportunity for us to do something differently or more creatively or something that's adjacent to what we do that could bring us an opportunity that we don't know about? We've kind of all understood that as we've grown and got further away from the front line as leaders, that we must be a little bit rusty about what's really happening in the here and now. And yet we've forgotten to be honest about that. So we do the back to the floor day. We sit next to them and we may pay attention. But actually, do we really invite them to tell us what they do in our shoes? Because that's where the real beauty is. They listen to our customers every minute of every day. That is the best feedback we could have if we were willing to tap into it.
yeah, because they actually know. Yeah, but they're not going to say it unless we ask. Yes.
Really.
And get curious about what is your job like? What are you seeing? And there's a form of respect in there too. You know, you're intelligent. You wouldn't have this job if you weren't doing really great at it. You must be seeing things that are redundant or that are could be different or could be better, or you must see things you think might help the whole organization. And you can't guarantee you're going to do them all in a minute, but you might on a lot of them.
It's
Yes.
so true. And it's then important what you do with that because we
Yeah.
have great employee engagement surveys, but they've become like a tick list. Did I ask you a
Mm.
question? Yes. Did you answer it? Yes. Brilliant. But if you don't do anything with that information, funnily enough, they won't tell you. And the other problem you can have is often it takes a while to do something with that information. You know, it might be
Mhm.
that they need a whole system change. Well, that's not you told me on Monday and I've got it done by Thursday. It's like, you know, that could take months. So it's in how we communicate, in the, you know, letting them know when we've done something. Like you said, this was a problem. Here's what we've done about it. It might have taken me 6 months, but I'm letting you know it's because you told me to do it that we're doing it. So making sure that we're reiterating to them along the way that actually you're helping us shape this. Your voice matters. Because the minute that you do that, the minute you start to share that with them, they'll come and tell you everything else. Yeah, they'll come and tell you the other things when they happen instead of waiting for those moments. And for me, that's the real moment where you've unlocked performance, which is when your people are coming and telling you, I've just thought of this right now. I've not waited till 2 weeks on Friday because that's when it's the engagement survey. I'm telling you now because it's important now. And I know that you are open to me sharing that with you.
And not just open and listening and curious, which is super important, but from a performance level, we're going to do something with a lot of what you tell us, and we'll tell you perhaps why we're not doing the things you told us that aren't feasible now, but maybe we'll do it next year, or that would interfere with this other department. You wouldn't want that. So we can't do this particular one. We're going to do this instead. But I think it's that they're curious too. They want to know what's going on. And if you're not letting them be curious about the whole process and keep them involved in the solutions, then they don't, yeah, they don't want to be a part of solutions if you're not going to do anything with them. Like you said, if it's just a tick list or a checklist, as Americans say, of yes, we sent out a survey. Yes, we got information back. They're going to start giving you less and less information if you don't do anything with any of it. And if you don't give them an update on any of it. And then it looks like they're just wasting their time.
Well, that's it. It looks like you weren't really interested. And I think, I spent most of my life in highly regulated environments. So sometimes the things they want you to change, you cannot change because there's a legal
Right.
regulatory requirement for them. But you can explain that. You can say, look, I know this doesn't really feel like it adds any value to you, to me, to the
To the
organization.
company, to the yeah,
But
to
this is
anybody that
what,
is our client or
yeah,
customer, did nobody. Yeah.
this is why we
Mhm.
have to do it. Here's where it keeps us safe. Here's where it keeps the customer safe. Here's where the law is asking us to do this because it understands something that we might not be able to see. And I've always thought when you explain the why, people understand it better. People go, okay, I might not agree with it, but I can see that there has been some thinking behind it. There's a reason why we're doing it that way. It's not just been ignored, not thought of, not understood. And it is helping, therefore, people see the parameters within which we sometimes have to operate. It's like we would love to do all of these things. Here's, what we're available with. And it's opening that door to say, with the people who work for me, it's like you can ask me anything. You can tell me any problem. I do like you to come with a potential solution to every problem. Because if you've thought
Nice.
of a potential solution, you've identified for yourself it's not as easy as I'm just going to tell you what the problem is and it'll all get solved miraculously. Because if you can't think of a solution, how likely am I going to be able to solve it for you on
Oh,
my
yes.
we can do it
Hmm.
together. We can work together and we can brainstorm it. But actually, this is not a case of creating an environment where you can bring me all of the problems and I own them. This is creating an environment where the problems are ours to own. So, in the same way, I'm inviting you to be part of the solution. I invite myself to also be part of the solution, and collectively we get there.
Yeah, I remember a study one time where they discovered that there's a Mensa test, and I think that's around the world. Mensa is for, you have to have a certain IQ, and the way you prove that you're really smart, and there's many, many ways of being smart. In this particular type of smart, the test is 20 questions or 30 questions or something like that. And what they discovered was that if you put any group of more than 10 people in a room, any group, as long as they all spoke the same language, and you gave them those questions, the group could always successfully achieve that Mensa level of genius that they were testing for. Whereas if you asked any one individual, you were highly unlikely that that was going to be the case. And I never forgot the fact that that means that you have any group of people you have genius collectively, and you have individual geniuses too, which may be in very specific areas that you don't have. And, the fact that we aren't necessarily tapping into that collective genius, I always think seems like a shame. And I think that's one of the things you're really, really good at. Your superpower, your genius is the fact that you bring out the genius in leaders and in their teams and making them so unbelievably, successful and in an authentic way. Yeah, which I've
It,
always admired. And that's why we pitch you to every single client we ever get and bring you in on tons of projects. You're really, really, really smart. And you're somebody that everybody can count on to the ends of the earth. And there aren't very many people like that in the world. So it's always an honor to be talking to you. Okay, so can you tell me any unusual things that you have discovered when you helped leaders to become curious about their teams that people were doing? I love the fact that they were sending out 1,000 reports, boiled it down to 100 in a month. No one requested them. And what a wonderful way to find out which ones really were useful and valid and which ones were not, aside from the obvious, these are ones we need to do for
yeah,
regulatory reasons or for, for those the IRS in the US and the equivalent in UK. Is there anything else that you've come across that you
there's
found
been
unusual?
so many weird ones. I remember going to one organization, probably my favorite. It was a strange thing we make you do. And they were like, well, what we have to do is we ring a customer up, and if they don't answer, we have to wait for 5 minutes, not doing anything. We just sit and wait for 5 minutes, then we call them back. And I was like, okay, let me try and understand. Was the customer engaged? No. Okay, so if the customer was screening their calls, in 5 minutes, they were likely still screening their calls. If the
Okay.
customer wasn't in 5 minutes, likelihood is they still aren't in. So it doesn't feel like it's very productive. And how often does anybody answer on that second call? Never. Why
Never.
don't we try something different? Why don't we call the customer, and if they don't answer, let's move on and call the next customer. Please, just give it a try. Let's see where we go. And we had a 25% increase in sales in the first week because we were actually talking to people instead of sitting there waiting. It's like,
That's a lot of waiting.
I was like,
That's
what?
a lot of waiting.
I asked, why were you doing this? And they were like, well, because Philip's asked us to. He was the owner of the business. And I was like, I promise you, he does not know you're doing this. And I also promise you, it's not a good idea to let him know you have been. He will be apoplectic. So I think what's best is
misunderstanding.
We just
Yeah.
put it down to misunderstanding and we don't do it. But it gave me, and the reason I share that particular story is it gave me a moment of understanding. Because I thought back to it and I thought, how many times have you heard a leader go, the board made me, so and so said. So whenever it's something that they think is going to be a little bit uncomfortable, they don't own the message. They make it somebody else's fault. And I realized when I look back at my own career, one of the things that I think made me successful is I always owned the message. Didn't matter how awful the message was. My time to argue the message was in the room. The minute that it had been agreed, my job was to own the message. So even down to running my first ever redundancy, I remember standing in front of the room and saying, the reality is this is happening to you. It's not about you. You're not in this position because you're not a great employee. You're not in this position because I wouldn't love you to work for me for the rest of your life. You're in this position because, quite frankly, I couldn't lead us to a better outcome. And for that, I'm sorry. And I remember people saying afterwards, it was like, well, you've only been here for 8 weeks. So, and I was like, it doesn't really matter. I'm a member of the board. We could not lead you. And you deserve that. You have the right to look in the eyes of somebody who made the decision. I am part of that board. I made that decision. I'm part of the board that led this as this organisation. It doesn't matter for how long, but I am, and I'm going to own that because you deserve that. And I realised that actually, without understanding it for myself, what I'd always done is step in front of it. And my reason for that was, if I say the board did it, what I'm basically saying to everybody is, I have no power here. I make no decisions. I'm just a superior friend. I earn a bit more than you, but I'm in it with you. I've got about as much power as you have. So don't feel bad for me. And that is never going to allow your organisation to grow. They don't want a superior friend. They want someone that's going to show them the way and give them the confidence that they're going to get there.
I am so incredibly honored to have you as a part of the Inspiring Victory tribe at the Inspiring Victory Show. Please do us a favor. We really need your help. Please like, subscribe, share, write a comment. It makes a huge difference with how many people we can reach here at the Inspiring Victory Show, and it makes a big difference to me personally. I want to make sure that we're providing content to as many people as we possibly can so they can grow and succeed. So we'd love to have you continue your membership here at the Inspiring Victory Show. It's free. Helping us out costs nothing, but it makes a huge difference in how many people we can help. So double your business, double your impact, and change the world. And thank you so much for being a part of this extraordinary community. Thank you. You do a lot with helping people increase their sales and increase how effectively they're getting those sales. I love the 1 week and they were getting 25% more sales. Are there other things that a company, a leader, a curious leader could do to increase the sales in their company?
Yeah, a good one is like, nobody likes to be sold to. Nobody. Everybody likes to buy.
Mm-hmm.
And those two things need to be understood. So what happens is, because we don't like to be sold to, we don't like to sell. Because nobody likes to do the thing they don't like to have happen to them. Not really, not deep down. And so what happens normally in a sales process is We know we're going to try and sell the thing. We feel uncomfortable about selling. And I say this with 30 years running sales teams. We feel uncomfortable about selling. And therefore, we try and get to the pitch as quick as we possibly can. So we ask only enough questions so that we've got a valid reason for mentioning the thing we're selling, the product, the service, whatever. But the reality is the customer isn't there yet. So we might have asked just enough to get there. But the customer didn't wake up that morning and go, oh, I wonder whether or not I'll get new windows today. Oh, hallelujah, somebody's rang me about windows. Isn't that serendipity? I was just thinking about that. So the reality is the customer was off doing whatever they were doing. We phoned because we want to sell them what it is we've got. So we've got to take them on that journey. We've got to ask them more questions. We've got to help them recognize that they have got a need. So we've got to help them to realize that actually, do you know what? I do need to do something about that. That has been on my mind. It hasn't been at the top of my mind, but it has been on my mind. So, and the more you pull them in, the more that you pull them into that. So, what would good look like for you? Okay. And if all of that could be answered, is there anything else that you'd like? Okay. And if that could be done as well, is there anything else? So once they're at the point where it's like, oh, now they're invested. Invested in, they're thinking about the thing that's causing them either a want or a need. And that's the other thing. I remember when I was working for Sage, I remember standing up, I was their UK head of sales. So you can imagine how well this went down. I was standing up at their town hall talking to the entire organization. And I said, the first thing you need to understand is nobody actually wants our product. And then I paused. And I could see my boss at the back looking like he might like to kill me at some point in the future. And I said, let me make myself clear. Nobody wants it. They need it. Unless they went into business to be an accountant, they did not want to do accounts. They need to do them to be legally safe. And so the organization can run. So you're never going to get them excited about the account. It's like if we think about in the financial services world, nobody wants the mortgage, they want the house. They don't want the loan, they want the car. So you can't sell them on the want. You can't get them excited about a loan or a mortgage, the biggest loan they're ever going to have. You can get them excited about the home they're going to build, about the family they're going to create, about what's that going to look and feel like. That's where the desire is going to be. This is the platform for you to achieve it. And unless we understand that, unless we realize that that's actually what we're working through, you can't sell a want to somebody that's got a need because the need is too pressing. You can't sell a need to somebody who's got a want because it's just not going to be that interesting. You've got to marry that journey up for them. You've got to help them understand that to get to there, you've got to do this. And I can help you to do that. And then imagine what's that going to be. So, for example, in the accounting place, is that ask the customer, if I could find a way that you could do your accounts and you could get 4 hours back a week to spend in your business, where would you spend it? What would you do with that 4 hours? What do you think would happen for your business with that 4 hours? They buy themselves. It's like, oh my God, I could go out and network. I could go and do this. Okay, well, I've got a solution that can do that for you. But they now know what it is that they're really buying isn't the accounting software. They're buying 4 hours back in their organization to help grow it.
Powerful, powerful. Yeah, I find that the salespeople on the teams that we go in and work with, the number one problem that they do have is jumping to a pitch and then being, like, as you said, uncomfortable pitching because no one likes to be pitched to. But if you can find the more honorable route is what I always say about sales, it's the graceful art of helping people get what they already want. But if you don't know what they want, then you may be selling them something that they need, but they don't necessarily, and nobody buys things that they need. They buy things they want. I mean, if people only bought what they need, the broccoli aisle at the grocery store would be just gone every week. And all that ice cream over there would be, that would just be sitting there for, a century. What I realized was if you really help people figure out what is important to them, what would be magic in their business or in this particular area, what it is that they want, even if your company cannot provide it, they will remember you forever. And sometimes they become your biggest referral sources, or they become a power partner where you're giving them business and they're giving you business and everything is really rosy that way. But the power of curiosity for me is I tend to be curious about people anyway, and I think you are as well. But tapping into that, I think, is as powerful as a sales leader in that sense of what is important to you. And, if we could do magic and if this was better a year from now, what would that be like? And all of a sudden, you've got people telling you everything. And then they might say, if I just had a few more hours, and you go, oh, now you know to tie it to this could free you up 4 more hours. Would that be valuable to you, as you said? Because you don't know what the biggest benefit to a client is if you don't ask them what matters to them. And then they just feel like you're just there to sell them. And I think there's a spiritual integrity too of I can always talk to more people. Eventually, somebody's going to buy from me. The skill of genuinely being curious about what matters to them and helping them get it, even if it doesn't include you or your company. There's a spiritual integrity to that I find really valuable. And people sense it because you can sense when somebody's just trying to sell you. They aren't listening to a thing you're saying. They aren't interested in anything that matters to you. Everything that you say leads right back to buy this. And I think that really puts people off. And I imagine that has tie-ins to leadership as well. If the same thing of not really being curious about what one of the people that work for you, what their goals or their desires are.